So, what are the 10 scariest cards in the tarot deck? What are the cards that everyone fears to see in a reading? In this video, we are going to break down the 10 scariest cards in the tarot deck and find out that we don't really need to fear them at all. We are going to see what they really mean and how you can use these cards and their meanings to your advantage. My name is Desiree, also known as Intuitive Gems. And I have been doing tarot readings going on 3 decades now. And I wanted to answer this question about the scariest tarot cards that are in the tarot deck and why we don't need to be afraid of them. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started and we're going to break them down. Number one is the death card. Now, why is this card so scary? Well, I think it's because it literally says death. And when you look at the image on this card, yeah, it does evoke a fear of literally dying. But we have to understand the symbology as it relates to this card and realize that death means transition, or it means putting to rest one part of ourselves as we reawaken and maybe even become reborn as another part of ourselves. All right, so one of the things that we need to recognize as it relates to the death card is that it means it's a time of transformation, it's a time of transition, and it's a time of profound and usually for the better changes. All right, next up we have the Tower card. Now, the Tower card is another scary card because it shows lightning striking and it shows people falling from a tower. Now, the thing about the Tower card is that it usually means that it's time for us to do something different. That's the energy of this card, is that it just means that what you're doing is not working. And if you continue on in that path, well, things may not exactly kind of go in the direction that you want them to. So, the Tower card, the meaning and the symbology as it relates to this card is that it means that it's time to pivot. It's time to do something drastically different. Otherwise, we may move into a situation that we just don't like. All right, the next scary card is the Devil card. Now, the Devil card, I think any type of imagery as it relates to the devil tends to trigger people in a fearful way. And I think a lot of that has to do with some ties or connections to religion. But the thing about the Devil card is that he's usually bringing something to our awareness. He's calling something to our attention that could be getting in the way of us having the experience or the results that we truly desire. The other thing about the devil card is that he usually means that sometimes we are trapped, but we don't have to be. It's all about a matter of awareness and what are you willing to do to break free of the hold of whatever it is that could be getting in the way of you living your ideal life or having that ideal experience. All right, next up is the Ten of Swords. This is another scary card because literally it shows a man laying on the ground with swords in his back. Now, this is the ultimate card of betrayal. But the thing about this card, again, is that it usually means we recognize something that definitely needs to be brought to our attention or can no longer be ignored. All right, so whenever you see the Ten of Swords, understand that it means you have to wake up. It means that you cannot continue to ignore or to suppress or to even not acknowledge. There's something here that has to be different. Now, usually this card indicates there's changes that needs to be made in a relationship, which could be romantic, it could be friendship, it could be family, whatever. But it's also a call to let you know that it is time to heal and that the worst is over and you can recover. Next up, we also have the Nine of Swords. Now, the Nine of Swords is another scary card because this is a card that shows worry, anxiousness, stress. And usually, this card indicates that you have this energy around you in some way. Now, this isn't always easy to recognize in ourselves, but when it shows up in a tarot reading, it means that it's time for you to really choose and to have a different intention for yourself, especially as it relates to your emotional and mental well being. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't feel these feelings, but it does mean that sometimes these feelings just don't serve you and that you have to make a conscious decision to do something different or to move past this in some way. All right, next up, we do have the Seven of Swords. Now, the Seven of Swords, I have said, is probably my least favorite card in the tarot deck. Why? Because it indicates that there is something or someone around us that isn't quite on the up and up. You know, when you have a gut feeling about something, but you just can't put your finger on it, this is the card that's telling you that you need to definitely explore that more and trust that feeling because it is accurate. All right. And sometimes we don't want to admit it. Sometimes we don't want to accept it. But usually, deep down, we know the truth. And this card is bringing that to our attention. All right. The other scary card is the Three of Swords. Now, this is the card that I pretty much consider the heartbreak or the emotional sadness card of the tarot deck because this usually means that there is something that is so despairing and so hurtful as it relates to your reading. And usually, the people who see this card in their reading, they already know what the situation is. And usually, it's a confirmation that yes, you are feeling some type of heaviness in your heart. But it doesn't mean that you can't heal from it. And it doesn't mean that you can't figure out some way to release this or to move past this. All right. Because healing definitely is on the way. And this card indicates that even though it may be painful, when everything works out and when everything is all said and done, it ultimately will be for the best. All right, the next scary card we're going to talk about is the Hangman. Now, the Hangman kind of has, I don't know, some people think that it's a self-destructive card. That's probably the best way for me to say it. But the hangman usually indicates that there is some hesitation and there's also some sacrifice that has to be made, but we just don't want to do it. It's like we just don't want to face the truth of what something is going to take or what something is going to cost in order for us to have the experience that we desire. So the hangman again is bringing to our awareness that, yeah, it's going to take some sacrifice on your part, or it's going to take you making a deliberate decision, and that you cannot hover or waver in any way because you're only ultimately hurting yourself. Next up, as it relates to scary cards, is the Moon card. Now, the Moon card is the card that I always refer to as the enigma of the tarot deck. And why do I say that? Because the Moon card talks about illusions. It talks about sometimes things being hidden, or sometimes things are deliberately being misrepresented to you or through you. All right. So when the Moon card shows up, it means that we have to go deeper and we have to really examine something because what appears may not actually be what really is. And sometimes, like I said, this card can indicate that something is being hidden from you deliberately. Now, I've also seen this card show up when something is right in front of us, but for some reason we are unable to accept it or we don't want to accept it. And so we cut it off or we block it out. So remember, when the Moon card shows up in a tarot reading, it means that there's something you need to explore further and you need to ask more questions. Finally, the last scary card we're going to talk about today is the Judgment card. Now, the Judgment card is a card of really being called to do something or being called to change something that you don't want to change or that you don't want to admit needs to be changed. Now, this is a hard card sometimes to have in a tarot reading because it's really saying that you need to explore something or you need to grow in some way in order to have something, change something, or to make a situation better. Now, the other thing about the Judgment card is that it also means that it's really time for you to mature in some way and that you cannot hold on to things that maybe worked when you didn't know better. All right. This is always the card of self growth, personal development, self improvement, all of those things. And it means that you can't ignore it anymore and that you are being called to grow. All right, so those are the 10 scariest cards in the tarot deck. What do you think? Do you agree with my list, or do you think maybe I should have added some more cards in there? Now, I'm going to say that if you do get these cards in a tarot reading, they're not automatically assumed to be negative. Like I said, for the most part, these are cards that are calling something to our attention, something that needs to change, or there's some way that we are holding ourselves back and getting in our own way. And remember, the tarot is a tool to help you in your own self awareness, in your own personal spiritual journeys to make you a better version of yourself. So, whatever or however you interpret these cards, understand that that truly is the intention and the purpose of working with the tarot. If you have any questions about this, or if you have any ideas about other cards you'd like me to talk about, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. All right, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you again really soon.